So even though I felt like I was very prepared going into her birth, I think I also had a very closed-minded attitude. I had some people come to me and say, hey, maybe a birth center would be a good idea. Hey, maybe a midwife would be a good idea. And like you said, like with the media and what they put in our heads, I was like, no, I have to be at a hospital. That was like my mindset. I have to be at this hospital for some reason.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. So we've been giggling for the last few minutes because we enjoy each other's company. Jamilah is here today, and she's going to talk about her two birth stories and her road to surrogacy, because right now she's pregnant with her third, but it's not her baby. And we kind of want to see how all that unraveled. Jamilah is a birth worker in town. She does birth photography, maternity shoots, headshots, because she just did ours. And she's extremely talented, amazingly centered, and a beautiful human. So we're excited that she's here today. And they're just, those are really good compliments, weren't
They were really good compliments. Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm very, very over the moon and excited to be here. So I appreciate it.
Well, we're excited you said yes.
Of course.
Our photo shoot was at Balboa Park. You guys will see our new pictures because we're going to put them on our stuff. But it was really fun, and you made us feel at ease. Ashley's look, freaking rock star. I didn't look at any of mine because I don't want to look at myself, but Ashley's look, awesome. So thank you for doing what you did, because it was a fun afternoon for us.
It was joyful. I didn't want it to end. And I remember thinking like, oh, I want to just like keep hanging out with her. Like, can we just bring her with us?
Yes.
To all the things that we're going to do.
Ashley and I don't get out much. So Jamilah, you might not want to hang out with us longer than you did. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I had a great time. You guys both have very magnetic personalities, and it was the best. I also did not want it
We're
to
very
end.
fun.
You are.
Yes. We are fun. So, okay, Ash, I'm going to let you start it off.
Yeah. So like Care said, we're going to be talking to you about your own birth experiences. So your first 2 times giving birth. Obviously, you haven't experienced your third go around yet. But when we were talking to you, you fill out a little form that kind of talks about your previous birth experiences. And there was something that you said in there that really jumped out at us, that you were not afraid to give birth.
Yeah.
And that is not something we hear ever, let alone often. So I just would love to kind of start with that. Like, why, when you found yourself expecting, and how can you like look back at that and say like, I wasn't afraid. I didn't feel afraid. Like, where did that come from?
I think that my lack of fear for birth came from my mom. My mom had both my sibling and I completely unmedicated, because that was just kind of how they rolled. And I knew from a young age that that's what she did. And I thought to myself, well, if my mom, the strongest person I know, can do that, then there must be no fear behind that. There must be no like immediate significant pain that it's going to cause me, or make me want something that's going to stop that pain.
Even after all the stuff we see in the media and probably things your friends said, you were still like, yeah, I can do it.
Yes. Yeah. I distinctly remember, because of course we did all of the hospital birth classes and all that kind of stuff. And I distinctly remember sitting in a class, and they made us write down at what point we would get an epidural. They were like, at what pain point do you think that you would get one? And I was like, well, there's 0% chance that I'll get one. So I wrote that down. I said, the only way you're going to give me any sort of pain relief is if I have to go in for a C-section, and you're going to numb me up and do the things that you have to do for a C-section. I said, that's the only time. And this man that was also in the class with his partner said, well, it's not a contest, after I said that. Like, as if like I was trying to like brag that was like not, like, I was more scared of an epidural, honestly, than pushing a baby out. So that's just,
I think someone feels insecure about his own pain tolerance right there.
I can't.
Well, wow, a man said that. What a surprise.
And that's an interesting exercise to say, what are your limits and focus, because we don't focus on limits, right? We focus on
Yes.
expansion and going with the flow. So
Mhm.
that's an interesting take for an educator to take. I've never heard that. So I'm
Yeah.
shocked. That's probably why Ashley's and my face both went, "Ugh, what?" Because I've never heard that. So
Yeah.
interesting. And that poor dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I cringed more watching them administer an epidural on video than I did watching a baby being born. And in my head, it was like, you're experiencing this discomfort and this pain for something greater. And I think that's always just been my mindset of like, oh, I know that I can do this. And I know that I'm a badass woman that can push this baby out and nothing's going to stop me from doing that. So I had no fear.
Okay. So let me ask you what age you were when you knew you were a badass.
Oh man. I mean, at a very young age.
But well, true. But I mean, as a pregnant woman, like how
Yes.
old were you when you were pregnant with
Oh
Hazel?
my gosh, how old was I? She's 6 now, and my birthday is next month. Math. I was 27.
Okay.
Yeah, 27. Wow, I
27.
feel really old now.
Yeah, well, exchange it for my 53 and you'll go, "Oh, I'm so young. I have my whole life ahead of me." It's a little different. Okay, so I know you didn't know what you were having before you had Hazel, but
Mhm.
tell us about Hazel's birth, how that all transpired.
So even though I felt like I was very prepared going into her birth, I think I also had a very closed-minded attitude. I had some people come to me and say, "Hey, maybe a birth center would be a good idea. Hey, maybe a midwife would be a good idea." And like you said, like with the media and what they put in our heads, I was like, "No, I have to be at a hospital." That was like my mindset. I have to be at this hospital for some reason. But I saw the midwives at UCSD. I had a great experience that whole time. And when I finally went into labor, I had no idea that I went into labor. I had had contractions all day on a Saturday and had no idea that they were contractions.
Oh, I
And so,
love labor denial. It
yes.
Oh
sure
my
is
God, literally the
it's the
best.
best, especially for first-time
Decadent.
moms. I highly recommend it.
Yum.
It's the best comfort
Yeah.
technique a doula
Yes.
can offer you. Yes.
Yes.
Just ignore it.
Hmm.
Ignore it. It's not
Yes.
labor. It's just indigestion. Just do what you're
Bad
doing.
gas.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And it wasn't until the next day, it was like Sunday morning, and I lost my mucus plug. And I texted my best friend and I was like, this just came out of me. And she said, are you having any contractions? And I said, no, but I have this like weird lower back pain that is like coming and going a lot. And she was like, you've been having contractions. No clue.
In your back of all
Yes,
places, and
yeah,
you didn't.
exactly. She's like, you're having contractions. So I was like, oh, okay. I think I'm in labor. Like, this is the beginning of labor. Cool. But it was 2 weeks early. And so I thought in my head, there's no way my kid's going to come early. She's going to come late. That's what everybody says. So at 2 weeks before her due date, I didn't have a bag packed. I didn't have anything ready to go. I had no extra toiletries, like nothing. So that full day, my husband and I went to Target. I labored at Target. I shopped. We went out to lunch. I labored while I was at lunch.
Oh,
And I
can we
just,
normalize this during labor?
Please.
yes,
Please normalize this during labor. Go shopping. Maybe not at
yes,
Target right now, but find a place to shop.
Trader
Relax, go
Joe's,
eat.
Costco.
yes. And so that was like my focus was like, I'm just going to keep going about my day. I'll figure it out as I go. We went out to dinner with friends that night and I had a big meal. And that was kind of what got things moving, where I was like, oh, I think labor might be coming much sooner than I thought. And then Monday morning rolled around. I was able to sleep just fine. And I got up out of bed and I felt a weird trickle that I had never felt before. And I was like, oh, I think my water broke. But in my head, I was like, but it didn't like gush everywhere. So I don't, I don't know what's happening. And they had told me, I called triage and they said, put a pad on, lay down. If you get back up and it trickles again, then it's probably your water. And so I did that and I just kind of leaked all day for a little bit. And I was like, okay, like this is kind of weird. But in my head, I'm like, I know it's my water. So I'm supposed to go to the hospital. That's what they tell you. Your water breaks, you go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital. It was very, very early Monday morning. And I said, well, my water broke. And I remember the OB on call said, "No, I think you peed yourself." And I was like, "I don't think so."
Obsessed.
I was like,
I'm obsessed. They were lying to you. They didn't want you to be there. I'm obsessed. Who's this OB? We need to
It was
know.
worse because then she told me, she goes, "No, I think it was just discharge." And I was like, "Well, I don't think it was discharge either." But she wasn't telling me because, like, looking back, I'm like, if she would have said, "Hey, just go home," I would have gone home.
But she couldn't.
But she
She
couldn't,
couldn't.
and I didn't know that. And I
Yeah.
wish in
Yeah.
retrospect I did know that, because then she texted me, saw my fluid. It was obviously fluid that was leaking, but then had to admit me. And then I was in the
Yeah.
hospital all day.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where they stuck me in a room and said, "Okay, if they pick up, let us know." Nobody told me to walk around. Nobody told me to bounce on a ball. Nobody told
What in
me,
the heck? This,
yeah,
Ashley, this never happens to people. We're starting the
No.
pit in 5 minutes.
Yeah. And I also like, I wish that doctor would have given you like a wink, wink,
yes,
you know, like some kind of signal, like, get out.
yes. I wish that had
Because
happened.
the way you said it, I was like, oh, she was lying to you.
She was hoping
wanted you
you'd
to
say, well,
get
I'm going
out.
home. But yeah, you didn't say
Yeah,
Yes,
it.
but you didn't
You
know to
didn't
pick up
take
the
the
signal,
bait.
pick up the ball.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like looking back, if that
Ah,
happened to me now, I'd be like, bye, because I spent way too much time with nothing happening because my water wasn't broke. So my contractions were super inconsistent. And I didn't have a doula that I had hired. I was going to use their volunteer doula program. So I didn't have a doula that was saying, "Hey, walk up and down the hallway. Hey, do this. Hey, see if they'll let you go home and come back." Like, because nothing's happening. Like, nothing. Um, and it's funny because I feel like Jamilah then was like, "This OB didn't believe me. I was right." Jamilah now is like, "Man, I wish she could have said, 'Hey, go home and just rest until it.'"
that OB was trying to save me in the best way that
Yes,
she could, you know?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I stayed there all day and nothing happened. And I want to say probably around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they said, "Nothing's happened. So, like, maybe we should just break the rest of your water." Because I was just leaking. I had a small tear. Water was coming out intermittently, but nothing was happening. And I said, "Okay." So they broke it. And then that's when everything happened. And my contractions were ready to go. She was obviously low enough that she was, helping me out. And so then they called the doula and she got there, and I was in the tub and I labored in the tub, and I got out and I labored on the toilet. And I just remember feeling so strong and like laying in that tub, like hunched over. She was like giving me, I think, like honey sticks or something and juice boxes. And I just was like, I am doing this. Like, I am going to have this baby. And there was nothing that was like, oh, I can't do this. Like, this is where we are.
I
Um,
love your mindset because
I love it.
there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's I'm
mhm.
having a baby. Which if we were on a desert island by ourselves, we could say
Yes.
I can't all we want. Our
Hmm.
body's doing it.
Yes.
So your mindset was gold.
Ah, thank you. And I remember having football on because it was Monday night, and the nurses coming in and be like, "Do you want us to turn this off?" And I was like, "No, you can just keep it on." I'm in my place right now. I'm in the tub. I've got this lemon essential oil. There's Monday night football on. Like, I'm in my zone. Like, don't mess it up. And then of course they won't let you birth in the tub at UCSD. So they knew I was getting close and I got out. That was when I threw up all over the place because I got out of this warm, comfortable space, and then all of a sudden it was just shaking. And so I got into the bed. I didn't know any better as far as positioning goes. But because I was in their midwife room, we had a queen sized bed. So my husband was on the bed with me. So he was directly behind me and I was kind of on my side. And I have pictures on my phone that are terrible that the doula took. But 2 minutes, I think it's 2 minutes before she was born, there's a photo of me and I am laughing, face like wide, mouth wide open, just like the biggest, like probably like very unattractive looking laugh like that you could do, but you knew it was genuine by looking at it. And I can see the timestamp on this photo and know what time she was born and know this was 2 minutes before I fully pushed her out. So
I just got full body chills down my full like, I literally have goosebumps.
And
It's
I love
crazy.
that you, for one, you have that, and that our listeners understand that your body and the coping techniques and the endorphins and the hormones that are present during birth can be like that
mhm,
and ecstatic. And it's still hard work. It was hard work, but
100%.
you can still be in a zone of labor land and laughter and love in your most powerful form. And
Yes.
it starts with mindset way more than body and prep. Way more.
100%. Yeah. It was all my mindset. And people usually ask me, like, oh, how were you able to, do two births completely unmedicated? I'm like, my mindset. I didn't let myself know that there was any other way for it to go. I knew that that's what I had to do and what I could do. So that's just the way I went into it. But yeah, then she was born and we obviously didn't know what we were having. And it was just this really magical experience of us having these two names picked out and my husband being able to say, not it's a girl, it's a boy, but he said it's Hazel. Like she was announced to us as who she was. Like just there she is. And we were fully convinced it was going to be a boy. So it was a very shocking, like, there's no way. Like, are you sure? And there she was. So yeah, it was beautiful. I loved every second of it. It was amazing. I had my family and my mother-in-law all waiting in the other room, like as I was pushing, and the whole time I was like, "Can they hear me?" Like, but they were all there, like ready to go to meet her, which was really nice. And then I just remember postpartum is where like things got like it was weird after she was born because then they were like I was obviously wanted her on me. I wanted to hear her. I wanted to look at her. And I just remember them like shaking her, like to get her to cry. And I just remember like looking at it and not knowing anything, but seeing the way they did it and going, is this okay? Like, is this what should they
It's
be
pretty
doing this?
rough, right? It's pretty intense.
Yes. And I was like, you, in my head, you don't shake babies. What are you doing to my baby? Um,
Wow, good observation from a new mom who's instinctually in her stuff, right?
yeah, exactly. And it was one of those things where I was like, I don't think I like this nurse. Like for some reason, it just like threw me off that was going on. But then after she cried, then they put her on me and they kind of like let us be for a little bit. But yeah, that was Hazel's story.
Love that.
Thank you.
I love everything about that. I'm like so engrossed in like what you're saying. And then literally when you were saying like that picture of you smiling and that 2 minutes before she was, oh God, I just love it. I love it so much. I know we've talked like on and off about this like in our interactions together, but I've never heard the full story. And so I'm just like, you're like pulling me in. So after what we would all describe as like an ecstatic birth in the hospital, how did you know or when did you know when you got pregnant again that you were going to do something different this time? What led
She had a
you
couple years in
to
between babies, right?
Yeah, she was 2018 and Max was born in 2021. So about 2.5 years.
Gosh, right after the pandemic.
Yes.
Ooh, fun time to have
so what led
babies.
you to no kidding. Was it the pandemic? What led you to like broaden your horizons and make that pivot to an out of hospital birth and where did you ultimately give birth to your son?
So after Hazel, I did lots of reflecting on that story and a lot of things that I would have done differently had I known, staying at home longer, those kinds of things. And so when I went back into another birth, I was like, well, I had a great time at UCSD. Like, there's some things I do different, but maybe I could change them. And of course, they still required masks at all my appointments. My husband couldn't come to any of them. So those were factors, but I think my biggest thing was going back and having my appointments be so short and they were always running late. And I didn't really feel like I was being heard. But I thought to myself, well, an out of hospital birth is too expensive. I was like, there's no way I could afford that. I don't think I could do it. And at that time, I think we had 2 or 3 birth centers in San Diego, tops, that I knew of, that I was looking at, and I just wasn't sure. But Nikki had just opened the San Diego Community Birth Center, I wanna say a few months before I found out I was pregnant with Max, and it felt like a sign. It felt like, "Oh, here's this other option." And I hadn't heard, like, glowing reviews from other places that, like, made me want to go there. So they're like, some places would be like, "Oh, I had a great experience here," or, "Oh, I had this terrible experience here," at different birth centers. And so that was kind of, like, not really jiving with me, and I wasn't sure. But then I told my husband, I said, "I wanna go meet Nikki, and I wanna go check this out," because I thought her mission was amazing. Every single person that worked there was a person of color. They had sliding scale for births. They just wanted the community to have access to midwifery care, and that spoke to me. So I made an appointment, and I went and saw her, and I said to my husband, "At least we'll see how much it is. We'll see if we can make it happen." The bill, even with insurance for Hazel, was ridiculous, so maybe it won't be that different, you know? So
I
I
think that's
went.
a shock for some people because if they're paying 20% or that's what their, copay is, sometimes it's less to have a home birth.
Mhm.
And they have
Yep.
way better care and, more compassionate care for
Yeah.
sure.
And then when you add up like everything all the deductibles at every appointment when you go and or what do you call it,
Mhm.
copays. And then like I remember with my kids, like met my I paid my deductible in 2010 and then they ended up staying inside until 2011. They came in the day after they were
Oh,
born and were like, "We need your deductible." And I was like, "I just paid that last month." And they were like, "It's a new year." And I was like, "Of course it
Of
fucking
course it
is."
is.
And so when I think of all the copays that I paid and all the deductibles and all of that, like, yeah, if you add it all up, just because it's spaced out over time, a lot of birth centers will work with you to pay over time also, you know? So yeah, you're right. It really can end up being comparable, if not less, than a hospital paying with your insurance. So
yeah, when everything was said and done, it was much less than what we ended up paying for Hazel's with insurance, as if that did anything. So we went and we met with her, and all I can say is that meeting Nikki felt like meeting an aunt that I had known my whole life. It was like
It's
I
that
was.
mother energy. It's so good.
Mhm. This full on mother instinct that even within first meeting, I felt like she wanted to take care of me and she wanted to make sure I had the best experience. And it was just unmatched. I literally walked out of there, even meeting all of her student midwives, and I said to my husband, I have to do this. Like there's no other option for me at this point. Like this is where we're having Max. So I started my midwifery care with her. I still kept UCSD to do concurrent care. And that way I could do all my labs with them. And I knew that would be covered and I wouldn't have to pay for any of that. And then about halfway through the pregnancy, they started just treating me really weird. And I thought being transparent with them and letting them know that I was having concurrent care and my plan was to deliver at a birth center was the right way to go. So they didn't feel like they were, you know, with me for a certain period of time with the expectation of delivering at their hospital. I wanted them to know that, wanted to be clear. But they didn't, they treated me differently. And my appointments got shorter and they didn't really care. Or when my iron was low and Nikki was like, here are all these great things that you can do that are not this like one iron supplement that your OB is going to give you. Let's do this. Then they treated me differently. Oh, well, what are you taking? Oh, what is this? Very questioning on the supplements, even though they were all great things that were geared towards me based off of where my levels were instead of just this blanket medication to fix it. So I started not going to appointments at UCSD, and Hazel was able to come to every single midwife appointment with me. She listened to the baby, she did the Doppler, she would put this gel on my stomach, she would measure my fundal. She was there every single time, like with the intention of she wanted to be there when Max was born. So even my mom was able to come. My mom never went to a single OB appointment with my first pregnancy, but she was able to be there and be involved. and it just felt like a family. So it was just unmatched care that now see a big difference from, of course, because I'm back in the hospital system. Um, but just the level of care, the making sure that I'm good mentally, making sure I'm taken care of, making sure my dentist appointments are up to date, making sure, I'm eating right, just all of those things that an OB will never ever mention. So,
They
or even.
definitely have the time and the skills to understand that all of that matters to
Mm-hmm.
really good comprehensive prenatal care. And
Yes.
we just don't have that in the American system.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had a couple reach out to me saying, we want to birth at home this time. Last time it was the birth center. My mom happens to be visiting and she doesn't think it's safe to birth out of the hospital. And I said, well, because they wanted statistics. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can give you some of those. However, yeah, there's a difference. There's a huge difference. If you need to be in the hospital, that's where you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
But for the 98% of us that are low risk, you don't need to be there. You really don't. You can
Mm-hmm.
transfer in if something changes, but they are experts at normal physiological birth.
Mm-hmm. And I always tell people that they think 10 steps ahead, whereas your OB is going appointment to appointment with you. If something is going to come up, my midwife knows weeks before it's going to happen, if that's even a possibility. Whereas the OB is going to say, oh, well, now it's an emergency C-section. Oh, now it's an emergency induction. Now it's these emergency things that aren't really emergencies if they had this great care the whole time, because they would have seen it coming.
I say that all the time. Like they're looking down the
Mm-hmm.
road. They're always looking down the road. That's really what sets midwifery care. Even like hospital midwives, if they work in the hospital with OBs, so much better at looking down the road ahead at what could all the potential outcomes when the OBs just want to deal with whatever's happening in the moment. And that's not to say all OBs, but typically, and especially in large systems where it's just a bunch of OBs looking at whatever case is in front of them that day, that's all they can do
They
because they don't know
they have
you.
too many patients on their load to know what's coming in front of them. And they're scanning at best before they walk into the room. I remember mine just barely opening up their chart and then looking at me and making sure they had the right person in front of them. So it wasn't, whereas a home birth midwife may have 4 or 5 a month that she's delivering, and then a couple other people that are, coming in for their next month's deliveries. But it's totally different because you're connected on an emotional level as well as physiological.
Exactly. Okay. So when I went into labor with Max, it was very different because I knew what to expect and I knew that it would just be a different experience altogether. My contractions had started and my water had tore again with him. And again, just like with Hazel, I went about my day. She had to be at dance. I had to be a mom. So there was no stopping and slowing down. So I remember taking her to dance and, just going about our day, running errands, leaking fluid. But I knew it wasn't something that I had to rush in at that point. I was leaking fluid. That didn't really matter. They even gave me those little swabs that tell you if it's the amniotic fluid to take home, which was a game changer because then I was able to be like, oh, I think I'm leaking my fluid. Let me swab. Yep, I am. It turned the color it was supposed to turn. So things were just really slow though. And so then I went in and they saw me and they said, we have these like tinctures, we can do acupuncture. Like there's all these different things that we can do to help, kind of move it along. And I remember I did acupuncture to kind of help him, come on his own. And they gave, I don't know what the tinctures were. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't remember them, but but all I know is they tasted like alcohol and I thought it was disgusting, but I took them anyway. And I went home and I don't remember what day of the week it was, but I went home and they started to kick in. And they told me, they're probably really going to kick in like late tonight, And I said, okay. So I laid in bed, put Hazel to sleep. Everything was fine. I think my husband was even on the couch because I
That's the
was.
key right there. I put Hazel to bed.
Mhm.
My first baby is safe. And then your body goes,
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I remember laying in bed, and as the night went on, I would have a contraction, and then I would go back to sleep. And then I would wake up, and I would have another contraction, and I would go back to sleep. And then finally, I wasn't going back to sleep. They were escalating. And more so like close to active labor that I felt with Hazel. But I was in denial. I was like, he's not going to come that fast. Like,
Second
we're
babies,
fine.
man.
Mm-hmm.
I love
And
second babies.
and I remember not telling my husband, and I just laid in bed and just worked through them. And I think finally I was loud enough that he was like, "Okay, let me get up and go check on her." And I was like, "I think we need to call Nikki. I think we need to call my mom and get her over here." And it was very early in the morning at that point. I want to say it was like maybe 4 o'clock in the morning or something. Like the sun wasn't even coming up yet. And I'm working through them. My mom gets here. I'm working through them. We're getting our stuff together. We get in the car and we start to drive, and the sun is rising. And I had this moment where I said, "Oh shit, I think I waited too long." And I just had so much pressure in the car. And I went, I might have this baby in the car. I that's a possibility. And but I also in my head was like, I did this right. I waited. I let my body, yes. I stayed home. I let my body do what it needed to do. I didn't want to put myself as comfortable as I was at the birth center and with them. I didn't want to put my body somewhere else that was out of the norm of what I was used to and where my comfort was. So we made it there as the sun's coming up, and they checked me and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're ready to go." Like this is like no question, like he's coming. So they start filling up the tub, and I'm sitting there, and I don't know if it was because I waited so long, but I felt like my body was like telling me like it was more intense and I wasn't sure how to handle the pain because I didn't have the same buildup, I feel like, of a hospital and waiting all day. And so I remember being there and being like, I am in insane amounts of pain. And I was like, I know this is going to be fine, but like this is way more intense than I remember it. But I feel like it was also a shorter period of remembering it. I didn't have the whole experience. And I looked at my husband while they were filling the pool and I said, I need to go to the bathroom. And he looked at me and I was like, take me to the bathroom. And at the birth center, they had this really long hallway from the birth room that is great if you want to labor up and down this hallway. Not great when you think that you have to go to the bathroom. So he takes me all the way to the bathroom and I'm stopping and I'm contracting and I'm stopping and I'm contracting. And I sit down and I look at him and nothing's happening. And I'm contracting, but nothing's coming out. And he's like, I think you need to push out this baby. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I have to go to the bathroom. I think he's coming.
Man, your denial is awesome.
Yeah. God, I wish I could have been in the room and been like, Jamilah, you just need to shit your baby out.
Mhm.
You don't actually have to go to the bathroom. Let's have a
Mhm.
baby.
And I just thought it was so like my husband is also just like a very quiet and like lets me kind of do my own thing kind of husband. So just the fact that he let me walk all the way down there and like didn't try to tell me, no, maybe this isn't it. Like he'd let me get there, you know? So we walked back, the tub was full. I jumped in and within 10 minutes he was out. Um,
Yeah. And maybe you did need to walk. Like maybe
yeah.
instinctively you needed something needed to happen to help him
Mhm.
shift and the head needed to rotate, whatever it
Mhm.
is, right? Like something told you I need to walk down there. Maybe you even just needed a moment with your husband to like walk out, catch your breath, go back in and have a baby, you know? Like your instincts are almost never wrong. It's just hilarious that you're like, yeah, I don't need to go.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember once I was in the tub, I even looked at him and I said, I don't think I can do this. And he was like, well, you have to. And I was like, no, no, no. Like, this is intense. I don't think I can do this. And I think because I was so mobile at such an active point of labor, I just experienced it so differently than laying there in active labor and not moving my body. And so, and my body knew what to do. So I just had to
Yeah.
like let it take over and trust. Um,
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Like I just I just got my second tattoo when I was in San Diego visiting you guys. And my first time getting it done, I didn't experience any pain whatsoever. But I was like in a private studio, like in a room. It was very quiet. It was just me, the artist, my husband, and like my friends who were there. And this time I went to a convention with Care, and it was very overstimulating. And what you're talking about like, getting in the car at such a late point, getting out of the car, getting into the birth center and like all of that. For part of labor, distraction is awesome. But in that moment, when there's a bowling ball in our pelvis, all those extra things are so
It's a lot.
overstimulating that it changes our pain tolerance. And I still wouldn't say like, oh, it was painful, I wouldn't do it again, but it got so annoying. I was so annoyed by the end of my tattoo where I was like, if one more person talks to me, I'm gonna throat punch them. And that's what it reminds the people talking to me and the people coming over to talk to my artists and like all the people walking by. I realized pretty quickly like this I am overstimulated. And that's what I'm hearing when you're talking about this second birth is even though you're going to a place where you felt very comfortable and you're going to be very well taken care of, you were way overstimulated in transition. You were being talked to, being handled, being, yourself having to get from point A to point B and all of this. And that's now that I'm like processing this with you, I understand why you got up and walked out of the
Mhm.
room with your husband because you were overstimulated. You were fully overstimulated. Your body was, and that's why you felt it as pain this time versus even though UCSD, not all the other pieces worked great, but that moment of being able to just kind of
Mhm.
on the bed
Mhm.
before you got to that point with Hazel where you didn't have that. You didn't really get to exhale with Max before it was time to push him out. It was like, oh, shoot, it's go time. Go, 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 go. During the most intense part of your labor, it makes so much sense that you were like, this is not fun because you're trying to do it while you're just going through so many other processes that it makes it harder to tolerate. That's why when we teach our hypnobirthing classes, we're like, put an eye mask on, put earbuds in, because when you are overstimulated, your pain tolerance is going to know
Mhm.
you need purposeful distractions, intentional distractions, not I got to get in the car, I got to get out of the car, I got to get in the door, I got to all that, all those things. So it makes so much sense. I'm sorry that it was that you had to kind of experience that in what you were hoping would be this like great birth experience, but it's also really amazing that you can look back at it and recognize it was tough. It was tougher than I expected and it was tougher than the first time, but
And it's
it
10
was
minutes before baby comes out. That's when a lot of
yes,
us want to
yeah.
backtrack
Mhm.
because it
Yeah,
is
and
so
then you can
intense.
you also had the great perspective of it sucked, but it was short, which like my mantra for anything difficult is this is temporary. So I love that you can look back on it and be like, it didn't last forever. But I can see the full picture of like what you were experiencing in it. It feels very familiar to me right in this moment.
And you got to push him out in the water this time.
Mhm. I did. Yes.
So how did that part
Oh my
work?
gosh. And my water hadn't fully broke yet until I was in the tub. So that whole time it was still just leaking. And I remember kind of sitting back in the tub and feeling that like gush even while I was pushing. And I had not experienced that before. And so that was just like incredible. I had my husband right behind me. And then one of my favorite student midwives that was there, she hadn't caught a baby yet. And so she was the one that caught him and brought him up. And I just remember it being so fast. And Hazel was supposed to be there. So my mom had picked up Hazel at the same time, but they were a little bit behind us. But because he came so quick, they missed it. And so I remember laying there with him. He came up. He's on my chest. I can't believe that like I did this water birth that I dreamed of, and laying there. And my favorite moment that we have on video, because one of the student midwives also had a camera and took pictures the whole time, which is like mind blowing to me. But they filmed my mom coming in with Hazel after everything was said and done, and I was still in the tub with him. And Hazel noticed that Max was already born. My mom did not because she was behind her. So my mom thought she was coming in to me ready to push a baby out soon. And Hazel comes in and says, "It's a baby." And my mom goes, "Yeah, mom has a baby." And you could hear my mom's voice crack, and you can just hear like this like sense of pride come over her that like her daughter's like in this birth tub with her son, and that's her grandson, like right there. And it was just like the coolest experience that I didn't really get that right afterwards. After Hazel was born, there was lots of chaos. But just being able to soak up that time in the tub with him and have him like wrapped up in a little towel on my chest and
No vigorous
having
rubbing this time, then I would say.
no vigorous rubbing, no, like it was just me and him and waiting for my placenta to come out. And it was just the most incredible moment and like the most incredible full circleness that I was like, oh, this is what I needed. And I felt that sense of like completion of like, okay, I did this. Like, this is my family. Here we are. And then just being able to wait for my placenta to come out on its own and put it in like a little bowl and it floated next to me. And, like, it was beautiful. And then we got in the bed and I just got to lay there with him and I got to nurse him and they just left me alone. And we just enjoyed that moment and we were together and that was it. And he was born at like 7 in the morning and I went home at 1 o'clock and it was beautiful.
That is one thing that people don't realize is when you're at the hospital, you stay a day, at least 24 hours. And sometimes if you have really good insurance, they talk you into staying for more. Oh, let
Mm-hmm.
us help you with nursing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to leave and go home and be in your own bed or have a home birth and just be in your own bed and they clean up and leave,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a different experience. It's so much more mellow and quiet and sacred, and it's just different. It's so different than the coming in every 10 minutes to check your vitals and check the baby and what's going on with this. And it's so different.
Yes. And I just remember like soaking it up not only at the birth center because it felt like we were in a home, right? I didn't feel like I was in a hospital and just having him in the bed with me and then being like, okay, now I get to go home and sit on my couch with him and just like snuggle. And I even looking back at like the timestamp of photos the day he was born where I go, oh my God, I had you this morning. And I'm sitting on this couch and I have you with like we're already home with our family. Like we're here. We have our unit together. It didn't feel like I had to leave Hazel for 2 days while I was in the hospital. Like we were just together. We were just there. So it was just like the best, most beautiful experience. And then they come to you. Like I didn't have to go back to a postpartum visit. My first 3 postpartum visits were in my house. And that was just the best. Like, how do you expect a woman who has just pushed a baby out, still bleeding, to walk into a doctor's office or like a pediatrician's appointment where they expect to see them so soon after? And you're like, how am I supposed to handle this? How is my body supposed to, heal? And how am I supposed to bond if I'm like loading my baby in the car to go to a pediatrician's appointment? But yeah, it was just a game changer for sure.
Well, and what would you say? Because we're getting ready to get on the road to surrogacy. We may have to make this a 3-parter.
Darn.
I know, bummer. Hate that. What would you say were the themes of each of those babies' births?
So I think the themes for at least Hazel's was like surrendering to my body and like being able to listen to my body and let it do what it needed to do. I know we already talked about like not having like the fear when I was in it, but just being able to trust in myself and know that I was keeping myself safe and I was taking care of that baby and I was able just to completely let go and see the strength that I was capable of. And I think with Max, I just had this, like I said, Nikki has such a motherly instinct that I just knew I was in good hands and I knew I was being listened to and I knew I was being heard and I knew that there was just this extra level of nurture that was going into that birth that it felt like a redemption birth. It felt like Hazel's birth story wasn't bad. Like it was relatively good for a hospital situation, I think.
I say
Um,
really good for a hospital situation,
Really
especially how
good.
they didn't rush you, make you feel
mhm,
like we got to start the pit. Like, I think
mhm.
that was, yeah, there's a lot that didn't happen that could have.
The doctor being like, "Get out of here."
Yeah.
Shocking.
Um, and I think that just being able to have that whole different experience and letting my body experience it differently and being able to really embrace that level of care that gave that birth, even within such different experience, I just felt seen. I felt heard. I felt like I was coming into my own. I felt like it was just, yeah, I guess for lack of a better word, redemption of the first one.
So good. Well, I would like to do a part 2, and then we'll do part 3 at the end of your current pregnancy. So let's come back on our next episode and talk about your road to surrogacy. Ashley, do you have anything else you want to ask or add?
No, I loved both of these stories, and I love hearing your how good you are at looking retrospectively and, like, pulling the lessons out. Like, I I just really I love talking to you. And so it's been a long time that I wanted to kinda hear how your birth stories went, and so I'm really, really grateful that we were able to do this.
Thank you. I'm honored to even be on here and talking about it. So thank you.
Okay, well, stay tuned, and we will see everybody next week.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.